All right. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here with another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. Got a special guest today. It's the coach's coach. Sean, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, John? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Sean's doing my bodybuilding prep, my nutrition, and my training, and we're definitely, it's definitely a collaboration. But I'm kind of letting Sean take the reins on this, so it's always tough when you kind of got to give up control a little bit. But it's been some good results so far. I lost all my Christmas cookies weight, and definitely the leanest I've ever been. So before we get into my personal progress with the program, Sean, for the people listening, maybe just give us a little background on like what you got going on right now, and a little bit about like what you do and like how you kind of got into coaching others.
Okay, well, I grew up powerlifting and a bodybuilding fan, and I, like a lot of people 20 years ago, didn't really know that there was much of a difference between the two of them. I thought, they were all professional wrestlers. I thought everyone who was jacked did the same thing, you know what I mean? I got into competitive bodybuilding when I was 17 or 18 years old because a lot of the attempts I had made at other strength sports didn't really work out for me, for like my body. I tried powerlifting, training for football, combat sports like martial arts, taekwondo, things like that, and nothing really fit. So I tried everything, and the thing that clicked was bodybuilding. The reason why I got started as like a coach and everything was because when I was a kid, I was a personal trainer. Like that was how I made money. And you work with regular people. If anyone's done any personal training, you will work with any age, any gender, any limitation, especially if you work for a commercial gym and work full time. And I really wanted to work with bodybuilders specifically. And I knew that a lot of bodybuilders, and back then a lot of powerlifters, they wouldn't like hire a trainer. They knew what they knew. They would hire a pro or something like that. But a lot of them had big egos. So I just started prepping me and my friends for free. And it kind of just rolled into one of these things where I consider myself a perpetual beginner. So, like, I've done 15 shows or something like that, and the next one I do, I'll consider myself a beginner still. So, so that's kind of like what I started specializing in. And as a coach, powerlifting coach, that beginners are very special. The person that they learn their first lessons from in the sport is what they carry out through the rest of their careers in some influence or another. If someone tells you to do 21 bicep curls, in your garage when you're 12, everyone who asks you for arm advice ever since then, you're going to say do 21s. And you yourself in your 30s probably still do 21s every once in a while. So I felt like it was a great responsibility for me to learn myself the best ways to go about training and contest prepping, and continue to learn by prepping myself. Like, I don't have a coach. I have people that I respect that give me opinions and things like that, but I go off on it on my own. And if I do bad, I go back and I analyze what went wrong, and it benefits the entire team. One of the biggest concepts for my bodybuilding coaching is that everyone's a team member, even myself. That's why you said there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of communication, as opposed to black and white, you do this, John, you do this, and that's it. That works really well because not only do you know a lot already, I mean, a lot of people I work with don't, but they do know themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a great point.
So you wanted to eat lean beef because that's what you've been doing for your whole diet. That's led you up to even before we met, and you lost, what did you lose, 100 pounds?
Yeah, depending on before I had lost 120 pounds. I put some weight back on intentionally, and then, so now I'm kind of like back. I was about like 211 this morning, so about 130 pounds down this morning. So, yeah.
So it's a great example. Like, if you did that eating lean beef, and then you came to me and said, this is what I like to eat for my protein source, right. And I was like, no, it's not a bodybuilding food for pre-contest. but it's communication. So it in my eyes, you can stick to that diet longer, which for anyone in any level of conditioning or shape for bodybuilding, the greatest factor is time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Anyone who does it in 6 weeks has been bodybuilding their whole lives for years and have never taken off. You know what I mean? But a beginner has been on the off season their whole life.
Right.
So they have to diet a very long time. And that's the first thing I said to you. Remember, the hardest part about this is that you've been on a diet for a year plus, and you're going to be on a harder diet for 6-7 more months. It's harder to do when you've been doing it for a long time, but it's easier to do if you have a teammate or a friend or someone who has an understanding, but a greater understanding of the sport or the process. So like that's how I coach. You know what I mean? And that's why I do it. I never had a coach when I was a kid. The people who helped me because they saw potential in me, but there was no accountability. So I try to provide that. Whatever I was missing, try to provide that for the person that I'm coaching. You know, basically guide into it to help people.
Also, yeah, I think that's really common. We have a lot of common things. One of the things I want to highlight, if there are people that listen to this later on that are coaches, I know you said you did a lot of stuff for free in the beginning. I did too, and I still do a lot. I think that's really important that you get experience and you kind of get reps, just like anything else. I think a lot of kids that I've seen nowadays that like they just got their personal training certification and they want to, charge $150 a session or whatever it is, and they don't like. It's not warranted yet. You have to kind of earn that value over time. Not to say you obviously have to pay the bills, but don't be afraid just to get experience, do internships, learn from people. And I agree too. Like I'm like my own guinea pig. I go through all like the programs myself first, and you kind of like learn. You kind of learn what works and what doesn't. So that's going to be like really, really key moving forward. So that's going to be a big thing moving forward for sure. I also really like the white belt mentality for you as well. So you're always learning. You're always willing to learn. You're always willing to kind of get better, and I think that's important because I think when you think you figured it out, then that's kind of like when you're really stuck. So I totally agree. So I want to kind of get into a little bit of. I know you said I thought this was really important in powerlifting. Now, what I've seen is even beginners are just like they're only squat, benching, and deadlifting. They're not doing any accessory work. I think when me and you got started and kind of people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, we all messed around with the bodybuilding magazines before we kind of get started with some of the bigger lifts and things like that. So we had a kind of a base, we had a foundation of some hypertrophy work and things like that. So what are some differences in your eyes between bodybuilding and powerlifting? And then kind of once you go through that, maybe you could talk about how they can work hand in hand with each other.
Well, before I say anything, I had a few people, like mutual friends and things like that were like, John wants to bodybuild? And I looked them straight in the face and I go, everyone wants to bodybuild. That's
yeah. I think at heart we all do. Yeah.
and then there's a reason why there's images of Arnold Schwarzenegger about your gym. I think he did one powerlifting. You know what I mean? That might be subconscious, but that's just what I'm saying. So now that I distracted myself, what was the question?
Yeah, no, it's true. I think that we all want to look good. I think we all want to look better naked at some point. You know what I mean? I think anyone that says different is lying. But I think that it's fun to have show and go. But my question was like, what are some of the fundamental differences between bodybuilding and powerlifting? But also like, how can they help each other? Like, how can they work together as well?
The only reason why I can answer the question effectively is because I've seen the differences, but personally don't really believe there are many differences. So let me just say that.
Okay.
I have this it's mostly a volume thing. I have like this volume rule in my head for smaller body parts. Like for instance, you don't do many side lateral raises in your powerlifting training. Even though a lot of like Louis Simmons programs I've seen for bench accessories, they almost do every time they do some sort of lateral raise.
Sure.
And they do a really, really high.
Yeah,
volume.
a lot of reps, a lot of total reps. Yeah.
So what I try to do whenever I work with a powerlifter who wants to be a bodybuilder is just look at their physiques and say, what hasn't been responding to the power training, like your side delts. So what do? You do like 90 lateral raises a week.
I'm doing like lateral raises like a couple of times a week.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I've worked with other powerlifters in the past who have done the same thing for either delts, biceps, triceps, calves. Most of them don't need it for hamstrings. Most of them don't need it for quads or major body parts like that, because they've been accumulating muscle from building power up over the years, right? And then a lot of times what's lagging behind would be genetics. But even other powerlifters that I've trained to do bodybuilding, like that side chest pose, like it goes from, oh yeah, he looks kind of jacked, to, oh, there's a pumpkin on his shoulder, you know what I mean? Like his bicep is blown up, you know. It's just it that one particular group of body parts is just, you hammer away at it. But everything else, it's almost the exact same. I mean, I have been training for powerlifting exclusively for like the last 6 months, and everything has gotten larger. All the muscle groups have gotten bigger. You know what I mean? It all has to do with effort. This is another phrase that I use when I'm coaching. I said to you, it's all the same hard work. You know what I mean? It's the same hard work that it takes to prep for bodybuilding or train like a bodybuilder. Same discipline is the same thing that you would apply to powerlifting. You just have to change it a little bit, and it's specific to you. You know what I mean? I think the main difference is just the volume of sets and reps for whatever given body parts. I don't think there's any way we can make your chest any bigger, right? But we did change up some of the exercises just so you're not just flat benching, That's another communication thing. You're like, hey, I'd like to get away from some of the big 3 lifts because I've been kind of like overdosing on them. And it's not only mental, it's physical too. You continue to push heavy loads through the same plane of flat bench, and you're more likely to tear your shoulder or your pec. You just change it up a little bit. You know what I mean? That's why I like all of the new powerlifting information that's out now. Because you see guys that are like very lean and athletic. They're not just big powerlifter guys. And it's putting the idea back in people's heads, like I mentioned before, which is still my idea, that powerlifting and bodybuilding really aren't that far away from each other. You could technically, as a fully developed athlete with good genetics, powerlift the whole year and have me put you on a diet and probably look 90 to 98% the part as a bodybuilder. We could have probably kept you on your, you do very specific training. You do because you're a geared lifter. But let's say we put you on a raw raw powerlifting training. You could do that. I can handle your diet, and you could get bigger or leaner. It's just it just would maybe take a little bit more time, or like the body parts you have that are lagging behind might not come up as quickly.
Yeah.
But that also, because think about it. If my bench lockout was slow, you would prescribe something for my bench lockout. But if my triceps were small, so you'd just prescribe something else. And the techniques would just be 2 different things. One would be a powerlifting technique, one would be a bodybuilding technique. But it doesn't mean working hard on both won't make your triceps bigger or your triceps stronger. It's just the same hard work, but different.
Yeah, I've noticed even though I've only kind of been bodybuilding for a short time, like obviously like you could really see like, especially my leg and like my back development and things like that. Like there's obviously a lot of foundation like there, and it's just a matter of like, okay, I haven't done a lot of like shoulder isolation. I haven't done a lot of like, isolated bicep work. So you can kind of like see like the stuff that I haven't really been doing, but they're still like, still a little bit ahead of like someone who's just kind of like going to the gym for the first time.
Your legs especially.
I know, it's like, who would have thought if you squat 900 pounds and then you get lean,
My first bodybuilding coach looked at me and my brother and said, you guys played football in high school, right? And we're like, yeah. He's like, oh, you got big chest and big legs. I'm like, yeah. Yeah,
so it's interesting. So the next part of that question was like, what are like some like common mistakes that you see that maybe some of the younger kids make? I know like, 'cause I know you train a lot of like first timers. I'm getting ready for my first show
Okay.
And what are some like things that you see with some people that like, I want to get on stage, and like what are some like kind of misconceptions or myths or just kind of general like mistakes that you see like the younger kids make?
Before I adopted the mindset that I wanted to help as many people as possible, which came from my own, just being lost and seeing other people and wanting to help them, I kind of spent a little bit of time with like too much of an ego, and people would be like, I want to do a show. And I would look at them and I would give them advice, but I would be like, hey, you got to put on more muscle. You got to do this. And I wouldn't help them. I'd give them too general of advice and I'd shoo them away. But after a while, I realized the only way they'll ever learn is if you help them out. And the biggest mistakes that I see people make is not, like you said before, handing over the reins. Any kid nowadays, in my thing, or any even first-time adult, can Google something and get a really good idea of what flexible dieting is, or bodybuilding prep. And unfortunately, in your business, they can do the same thing now. You can get, I don't want to say anyone's name, but there's popular programs and stuff like that are very catchy, and every beginner uses them, and blah, blah, blah. And I've had people ask me questions based on programs like that, and I said, you're doing the right thing now. And they're like, what, with the program? I go, no, you're asking questions. And they were like, what does that mean? And they think that they mean asking me questions. I'm not an powerlifting coach. I'm just the friendliest guy they know who lifts more weight than them. But asking people questions, being humble enough to take the advice, that's the nowadays what I see what's wrong with beginners, is that because there's so much information, they'll get really educated, but they're not humble enough to say to themselves, hey, maybe this guy who's been lifting for 20 years and squats 900 pounds knows what he's talking about. Maybe this guy who's been bodybuilding for a decade and won the overall at the local championship, maybe he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
A lot of them, are don't ask the questions, and if they do get the advice, won't take it. But,
yeah. No, you're right. I think there's such like an information overload, and I think it's good and bad because obviously you have to ask questions, you have to get context, you got to be able to filter through some of the bad information that's out there too. And I will say that knowledge and application are like two different things, and obviously experience is something that you have to do reps. So I think that's kind of like the missing link a lot of times. And sometimes like with the beginners, I find too, that sometimes they have to like kind of learn the hard way a little bit. If they kind of think they know better, they have to kind of take their lumps a little bit, and they kind of like, learn a little bit. I know sometimes like you have to kind of let them kind of see it for themselves, and then they kind of come back to you and they're like, okay, I see what you mean. But
it's funny because it's like one of the only things I've experienced where that's like a thing. You know what I mean? Someone could roll into your gym, like a 25-year-old kid, 18-inch arms and abs, and not know you from a hole in the wall, and you're talking to everyone and everyone's listening to what you're saying because you're a good coach, you know what you're talking about. But he looks at you and you don't look as jacked as him, and he's like, hey, what the hell does he know?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of that goes around. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of their perception of what it's supposed to look like or whatever, their ego gets in the way. And not enough. Everyone wants to save time without asking questions. You know what I mean? If you're wandering in a store looking for, the right size of jeans or the right pair of sneakers, you can spend an hour looking for them. But if you ask one of the employees, you know what I mean, they're going to point you in the right direction. I think that everyone has the right spirit and the right intention, but sometimes they go about it in the wrong way. And I don't blame anyone for downloading a program and trying it themselves. But I've met people who, rule number one, get a 6-week program, read it from week 1 all the way to week 6. So if you have any questions, you have them before you get to the actual thing. Hey Sean, why would I do a high pin press? Well, I don't know. Is your lockout weak? Are you trying to overload your triceps in some way? You know what I mean? What level are you at? A beginner, intermediate, advanced? Are you competing? Why would the coach put it in there? Yeah. Oh, no, it's just something that came up in week 4. Well, all right, well, if you read through the whole program, you could have asked this question before you even started and went through it with no problem, as opposed to now having to DM me a question at 11 o'clock at night, the night before bench day. Like, there's just not enough. People forget, and I'm less of this than you are. I mean, I have a lot of respect for you. It's not like I'm some sort of scientist of some sort or whatever, but I tell people it's a science. You're still learning something. You're still experimenting with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every teacher used to give out that test where it was like the list of rules, and at the bottom it says, don't follow any of these rules, because they knew every student was going to go rule by rule instead of reading it in its entirety. And you get taught that lesson in like 3rd, 4th grade. So I apply the same thing to a program. The same thing. Diets change a lot, but that's why I give everyone the map out when I sit down with them beforehand.
I think it's important, whether you're training for aesthetics, you're training for strength, or anything you do, you kind of understand, like, it's not just about a single workout. You have to understand what came before. You have to understand what's coming after, and you have to understand the progression. That's like one of the things I find it's very, very challenging to get through to new people, especially when we're in like a lower intensity, high volume phase and the weights are like lower, and they think like you don't need to be able to squat 800 pounds like all the time. Like, you need to be able to do it on that meet day and progressively, get better over time. Like, you don't need to be peaked all the time. I don't need to have abs all the time. It's like, so understanding there's a process and understanding like where you're going, and then obviously troubleshooting like along the way. But I think people like kind of like, they don't see the big picture. So I think that's a great like kind of piece of advice. If you're going to start a program, don't just look at like the first day. Like, try to like understand what's the progression, like how does the program progress, how do you troubleshoot, and then obviously working with the coach. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to communicate. I think one of the things I try to, I think we, even if it's just a text like once a day, I always try to I check in with you as much as possible. And for me, that's been like really valuable like during this journey.
Everyone, even the people who start out saying, why do I have to email you or text you every day? And some people start out saying that to me, or some people get like a few weeks in and say,
they don't understand.
Do I still have to text you? And I say to them the same thing. I go, eventually you're going to appreciate the accountability.
Right.
I myself, and this is something else that I said to you, and again, it's another principle or whatever theory cornerstone of how I coach people. I become the client. I'm operating as if I'm doing your prep myself. And when I prep myself, I wake up, I look at the food log from the day before. I actually started doing that to see if I had the same foods at my house, to see if I could just easily make it the meals for the day, because I didn't want to have to Google everything. But besides that, like, I would check in with myself every morning. It would be, especially early in years, I lost friends on like social media. Like, stop taking pictures of you with your shirt on. And I'd be like, well, don't you notice how it's the same 2 profiles, a profile, side pose, and then the front and then the back? Like, and they're like, yeah, but sometimes you do it twice a day. And I tell them, I was like, it sounds crazy, but I'm doing it so that I can view myself as a second party. You know what I mean? Coach Sean and, back then it was 1, 2, 3, 4. They were 2 different people. And I would look at the pictures later and assess myself. And I do that with every client. When you send me pictures or photos, I look at them and then I close it right away, because I don't even want to think about what the opinion is right off the bat. And then I look at them later, and my opinion later is always, wow. You know what I mean? When you go in saying, all right, I'm going to assess this guy's physique, let's see what's going on. You look at it, even from a second party standpoint, you'd be like, this, that, the other thing. Make a list in my head of what I thought I didn't like, what I saw. And then when I go back later, I actually take the paper and pen out and I start going through things. And when I start writing it down, I can assess things more positively without like bias. You know what I mean? And it's very interesting because I have now done it. I have 4 people competing now, and I might have to come up with a new system because it takes up a little bit too much time to get up. Because I look at everybody's physique, I look at everyone's pictures, and you've been extremely good about it. Because now I have to beg people to send me appointments and stuff most of the time. And it kills me that I can't come out next week and see you in person because of all this. Because that's in itself another principle of how I coach people. And it's very like it's kind of like a very low rent thing. I'm actually working with someone now who's too far away to go meet in person, so it's kind of like my first real only pictures and videos. But one of the big things was I always liked working with people who I could drive to go see in person. You know, I've even earlier in your prep, I've gone and done the finger calipers and pulled, skin or body fat on certain places to assess how much muscle or water or fat was in a certain spot. Because sometimes seeing it isn't enough, and sometimes seeing it in video or
it's not the same.
Photo,
yeah,
it's not the same. And again, that's like I'm very much like a towny type person. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I grew up in the same town I live in now. I prep people primarily for the Long Island show that's out in Hop Hog because it's the closest one. It's growing in popularity and difficulty. When I first started doing it myself as a competitor, it was like you go to Long Island, people would be like, oh yeah, it's a good show to warm up at. And then by the time I did it in 2017, there was 17 people in my class, and I had it at like the Marriott Hotel or something. And I'm like, oh crap, what the hell happened? I thought this was supposed to be like the back of a high school or something like that. But it's grown in popularity. The guys who run it are awesome. And one of the biggest things is, like, you can have your family go see you. If you grew up on Long Island, live on Long Island, like, it was the first time, like, my godfather had gone see me compete because he didn't have to travel to New Jersey or the city or something like that. So, like, those are big deals to me. You know what I mean? Like, I love that you're a Long Island business owner. You know what I mean? It's part of the network. You know what I mean? I have plenty of clients of mine who either own small gyms, training facilities, personal training companies, some that own non-related businesses, like life insurance companies and things like that. But that, to me, is like, that's really important to me also. I would love to have 50 clients from Indonesia emailing me every day or whatever, but, it would be more lucrative. But I just don't, to me, there wouldn't be as much passion in it. I'm not going to translate a bunch of macros in, some other language and then start mass pumping them out to people. It's just, to me, I wouldn't be able to do it.
And to your point with that, like, that's why I have the physical gym. I really like having, like, the in-person team. The stuff I do online is a lot more profitable because there's really, like, no overhead, but I really can't see myself not coaching people in person. It's a big part of what we do, and I feel like that's our kind of, like, home base. That's our family. That's our community. A couple other things I wanted to highlight as well. I think if it's important, like, you do it every day. So it's like a lot of times it's like, do I really need to check in? Do I really need to weigh myself every day? But when you do something every single day, like, you're building a habit and you're building that discipline. So even if, like, you're not motivated, like, if you have that, like, habit, like, you're just going to, like, do it. And that's a really important principle. If you were running a business, if you're trying to improve your career, if you're trying to improve strength, if you're trying to improve anything you want to do, if you do something every single day and you're really consistent with it and you build it as just a daily practice, you're going to be hugely successful in the long haul. I mean, it's just you're getting more reps in at that point. So I think that's really great advice. I wanted to shift gears a bit. So I've kind of, like, hinted at it. I haven't really announced it publicly yet. Obviously, we know. So I am training for my first bodybuilding show. It's supposed to be May 30th. We'll kind of see. I plan on still doing it regardless of if it gets postponed or not. If I have to stretch out this prep a little bit, I'll bite the bullet and just kind of see it through because I always want to finish what I started. But so I'd like to kind of switch gears a little bit and maybe just talk about, what it's been, and I can kind of add in my commentary, but what it's been like working with a power lifter, what it's been like working with myself personally, and then maybe some of the things that we've been doing just to kind of get me ready to be on stage, because obviously I've been as heavy as 340 pounds. Now I'm just fluctuate between like 211 and 215 at this time. So, and I'm getting this is definitely the leanest I've been my whole life. So I'm excited to see, the finished product.
Okay, so I can tell you from past experiences also, but mostly, stick to what we're working with here, is that bodybuilding is a personal thing.
Yeah.
I know that when I started in it, people were like, Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, get your pro card, get sponsored by Muscle Tech, and all this crazy stuff. But the fact that there's dozens and dozens and dozens of local shows and amateur venues, the concept that anyone can train hard and do it is becoming more true than ever. And I no longer look at people weird if they, even if they came from never training before ever, never touched a weight. Someone might say, you want to do a bodybuilding show? Well, why would you? Same thing with a powerlifter.
Right.
If someone came to you and we'll talk about personal experience, if someone came to you and lost a ton of weight and like your biggest roadblock is the loose skin, someone would say to you, come on, it's going to take forever to get
right.
It's gonna look this way, it's gonna be this way or whatever. It's all a personal journey. You know what I mean? Like, are you gonna get up on stage under any circumstances as a beginner at the beginning of the summer and turn pro? No, of course, it's not even the venue for that. You know what I mean? Are you gonna get up there, look the part, accomplish the goal you set out, and have garnered? And trust me, it's not an ego thing. You've been through it all. It takes a lot of hard work. There isn't, especially nowadays, there isn't one person who sees someone go through it who doesn't think that they extremely hard. And like I said, I've said this to you before. Your placing at a bodybuilding show doesn't determine whether you're a good bodybuilder. You know what I mean? The hard work that you put in, the hard work that you display the day of, those are the things that make you a good bodybuilder. Those are the same things that make people a good anything, a good powerlifter, a good boyfriend or husband, a good father, whatever. There's a certain amount of just consistency because it's important to you. Not because the show is May 30th, not because, oh shit, I told everyone I was going to do this, so now I have to do it. There's such a level of personal accountability that, John, I didn't even know I had inside of me until I started doing this. You know what I mean? If you told my mom when I was 18 years old that I'd been getting up at 4 before work every morning to cook food and do cardio, she would be like, whose son is that? So it really is one of those, it's a very, very personal thing. So that being said, anyone who does it, especially someone who's been through a great deal of weight loss or someone who's accomplished a great deal in another sport like powerlifting or something like that, it's much easier to work with those people. And that's why when anyone comes to me and explains to me how hard it is on them, I explain it with that phrase. It's the same hard work. If someone's a single mom and they're like, I can't do this, it's too hard. You raised a kid by yourself. That's way harder. You know what I mean? Apply half of that to this. You know what I mean? It's the same. So really, it's very easy. Now, with your particular situation, as far as transitioning to bodybuilding, it's very unique. It's almost like working with someone who's done a bodybuilding show before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost you understand the value of communicating with your coach. You understand the value of making accommodations or sacrifices in order to get the work done. You understand all those things. So we don't have to go over those roadblocks. We can get right into the hard work. There's a lot of beginners that I work with that are like, I don't have time to do an hour of cardio every day. And I mean, sometimes they hate me for wording it this way, and I'm not a mean guy. But I look at them and say, what time do you get up for work every day? And they say 7 a.m. I go, okay. And I take their program and I write, wake up, 6 a.m. And they look at me and they're like, what is it? And I'm like, well, for lack of a better term, I'm in charge of everything from here on out. And if you have to get up an hour early to know that it's done and make sure it's done, powerlifters aren't used to that, right? But hard workers are. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting up at 5 a.m. every morning, and even during this, I don't have to be anywhere. I'm just working at my house. But in order for me to get my workout in, I'm up at 5 every morning. So I mean, that's just part of what I'm doing right now.
Like most people nowadays, I watch a lot of YouTube. Like that's how I entertain myself. And I see these fitness mogul guys who work from their offices and their homes and stuff, and they still get like a Mark Lobliner type. Like they still get up at 4 in the morning and work out themselves because they know if they want to be a successful business person, they have to keep a schedule. They're not just going to stop whenever they want to work out. Most of them still meal prep. You know what I mean? Even if I'm stuck at home, I cooked all my meals, yesterday for the next 3 days. You know what I mean? Like how else? Like I said, powerlifters are traditionally hard workers, especially if they've accomplished as much as you have. Some of the high-end people that you've trained, you just have to get them to relate the hard work.
Yeah.
The reason why most people's weak body parts come up, or you can get a lot of definition in like a powerlifter or anyone's legs, takes a lot of repetitions, man. You're on the program. 20, 25, 30, 40 repetitions for lunges, leg extensions, all that stuff. And it's hard to convince people to do that, But if they're a hard worker, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. I have regular fitness people that I train for competition and otherwise, like aerobics instructors. And I'm like, all right, did you get up and do your half hour of the stepper? And they're like, nah, I taught like 4 classes today, though. And I'm like, that doesn't matter.
That's your normal activity, and I think that's another thing. That's another thing that people don't realize because I've been working with this one guy too. That I'm trying to help him with weight loss. He's like, well, he works in like the city area and stuff. And he's like, well, I walk a lot. I'm like, that's great, but that's like your normal activity. So that's like kind of accounted for already. So if we want to expend more calories, you got to do more work, and it has to be in addition to what your normal activity level is. I don't know if you want to talk about need or anything like that, but I think people don't kind of realize the point sometimes. But
my one explanation for exercise adaptation is asking people if they've seen a fat mailman. And a mailman has their route, and the first couple of weeks that they do their route, I mean, they probably lose like 20, 30 pounds. But then over their career, they put it back on because they've their body. That's their
baseline now. So yeah.
I've worked with people at all different types of jobs. It's hard to ask someone who put up roofing all day to do cardio. You know what I mean? But it's also hard to ask them to lift weights too. It's also hard to ask them not to eat carbs all day. And if they want to do it, they want to do it.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes these things are like when you have solid principles. I've been doing this for like 6 years, 7 years. You almost sound like a broken record. But guess what? Roofers are hard workers. You know what I mean? It's the same hard work. If someone came to me, I did my first contest prep in 2006, landscaping and working at the gym. I woke up every day to get the machines ready at 7 a.m. Worked from 7:30 to 3:30. Then went to the gym and worked from 5:30 till it closed at 11. And the only reason why I got to train is because my coach managed the gym, and I used to work out at 11 o'clock at night. So I don't, if you wanted to do it, if you wanted to get it done, then you would. It's the same hard work.
Yeah.
People, I'm sorry. It's never easy, but transitioning from elite level powerlifting to bodybuilding, it has to do with being able to follow the diet. That one roadblock, everything else is the same hard work.
I think the skills are the same, but the process is different, obviously. I think that's the thing. If you're successful in business, if you're successful in powerlifting or athletics, you could be successful at a diet. You could be successful at cardio. One of the things I will say, though, I realized going from powerlifting to focus on more on aesthetics and bodybuilding, you're spinning a lot more plates, and there's just a lot more variables. Like I even noticed that my physique could change like by the hour depending on like what I eat, how much water I have, and there's just a lot more things to consider. But if you're organized and you have a plan and you work with a coach and you communicate, there's probably, there's less of a cost if your diet's a little off as just if you're just powerlifting, and the cost is a lot higher. But yeah, the skills are there.
We can get this on video officially though, because I actually had this debate at an animal barbell thing at Coliseum with Oak and Larry like 5 years ago, and the question was, and you'll attest to this, but when you're on a diet, you perform better.
Absolutely, no, it's that's absolutely right. I think that I guess my take on that is, at least from what I've seen in my experience, part of the protein intake is paramount for recovery. I've kind of noticed this myself. I'm able to handle a lot more of a workload. The other thing that you got to realize too, if you're not getting like micronutrients and things like that, your body's just not going to be functioning as better. You're not going to be feeling as better like day to day. I will say, I think total calories is probably I'll put like a random number on it. Maybe it's like 80% of it, but the other, like the micronutrients, the macro breakdown, maybe it's like the other 20%. And I think that's where like a lot of the powerlifters are missing the boat. They might be getting enough calories, but are they getting enough protein? Are they getting enough micronutrients? Are they getting enough water and electrolytes and those sorts of things? And that could be, if you're at an elite level, that could be the difference between having an amazing performance and not getting on the podium. I've definitely learned a lot. I think the diet is a huge factor, not just for aesthetics, but yeah, performance as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a real normal person outside of this, and I understand, like, if you can eat whatever you want and you still have ab definition or whatever, and that you're not motivated to diet, like, I understand that as a concept. Like, trust me, that's not lost on me. But if you're trying to accomplish something above and beyond the normal person,
right? Yeah.
Because having a fast metabolism isn't common, but it is a normal thing. People do have it, you know what I mean? But there is a very small percentage of people that just have a lot of muscle for no reason. A lot of people have no body fat for what it seems like no reason. But very few people have a lot of muscle.
That's fair.
And in order to, the only way to build muscle is to train, is to build it. So, you know, I think that the fact that you are on a diet, even the dieting you're doing yourself before we started this, is a big factor as to why you understand, achieve, and maintain the progress that we're making. You know what I mean? It's almost like a greater understanding. I have to work with people through first phases to get them to understand a lot of those things. And it has to do with what you just said. People are like, but I like carbs. Okay? But at a certain point, if they don't agree with you, or at a certain point we have to drop the calories so low that something gets sacrificed, the carbs are going to get sacrificed. You know what I mean? That's why, I mean, I start out with, I maintain the entire time that the diet is flexible, but there are things specific to how the diet goes that starts making things more solid as it goes through it.
Yeah. Well, when your calories get to a certain point, it's not very flexible. You know, if you're having 80 carbs a day, there's really only so many choices that you have at that point. And if you're having, like for me, like I'm having over 300 grams of protein a day, you know, I'm gonna choose a leaner protein because just out of necessity at that point. So I think that's a good point, because I think that's a real big misnomer with flexible dieting, is that you can't have clean foods, or it's not the clean foods, but it's really just about, you don't have to have a certain like food all the time, as long as you're fitting your macronutrient and micronutrient needs. You get, and obviously if you're further away from a contest, or you're further away from your goal, then you have a little bit more flexibility than if you're, you know, trying to be 10% or less body fat, you know.
I started out doing this for people that I knew personally, who saw, you know, how my body was changing and everything. And when I explained to them flexible dieting, a lot of them, and going forward, were like, say stuff like, but I don't want to eat Pop-Tarts. And I'd be like, you don't have to eat anything you don't want to. So I started putting in like...
It gets confusing with the messages out there, yeah.
Yeah, I started putting in like the consultations, or if they're remote, like the questionnaire, like, what diets have you followed in the past? What what popular diets have you heard of or tried? Like, are you currently on a diet? You know what I mean? And a lot of people do low carbohydrate diets. And because that's a thing, I'll suggest having moderate carbohydrates, and they think it's the highest amount of carbs ever. You know, someone will be on 35 to 50 carbs a day, but they weigh 150 pounds. So then I'll put them on 150 grams of carbs to start off, and they'll be like, I can't eat that much. I'm like,
That's like a snack for me.
Yeah. I'd be like, okay, well, you know, we're gonna get your metabolism sped up, and then in a couple of weeks you'll be like, where'd my 150 carbs go?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be like, no, you're still eating them. You just don't realize you are.
You're burning it. You're burning it.
Burning them off.
Yep.
But I was working with another coach who owns a gym on the other side of the island from you, like close to Queens, and he has his clients, like his whole gym, like doing like kind of like a tracking system. I think it's based on intermittent fasting.
Okay.
But you know, I've been working with him on his diet, and you know, a lot of the things he learns, you know, benefit his clients as well, and things like that. And I was going through protein sources with him, and I don't know where he was getting his information from, but all of the numbers they had were off. And I was like, okay, well, where does this info come from? And right away he was like, oh, we use this website or whatever. And I said, stop. Because one of the things was eggs. I was like, stop. I said, where do you get your eggs from? He goes, the supermarket, like everyone else. I was like, so open a carton up.
Yeah,
Yeah. What's on there? You know, people, it goes back to the too much information thing, or too much convenience. You know, I've had people just scan stuff in MyFitnessPal, and then me look at the breakfast they had, where it says that there's 7 grams of carbs in their eggs. I'm like, where?
Yeah, you gotta double check some of that stuff. I find errors all the time in MyFitnessPal. Just because it's in the database doesn't mean it's true. I think it's important to do your research, do your homework, and if something doesn't make sense, like you said, if there's like 7 carbs in eggs, like you mentioned, you know, double check it. So I think that's a good point. You know, especially when you start tracking stuff.
It's a good opportunity to teach a client about natural protein sources and processed foods. I mean, you could tell them, you know, carbs and protein don't usually naturally exist in one source. It's usually fat, protein, or carbs by themselves.
Yeah, if it's an animal.
That's lost on them completely. So most of the time, that's why I have the system that I have. You concentrate on it more than others because you have a higher understanding of it. But most people just follow 3 numbers every day. Just 3 numbers. And write down how you filled out your protein, your carbs, your fat. Weigh yourself and send it to me the next day. And then just submit to that process.
Yeah.
Now, it's amazing how once they do, or once anyone does, things just start to click. And it's like I mentioned before. Powerlifters don't concentrate on nutrition. And they don't realize the value or benefit to it. Just like sometimes bodybuilders don't realize the benefit of training with weights to percentage, or not training to failure, or doing whole body workouts, or lift specific splits versus body part
compound
splits.
Movements. Yeah,
I haven't done a body part split in 2 years. So you know, I think it's way more effective to train more like a powerlifter than a bodybuilder. And then if you could just convince a powerlifter that it's more beneficial to eat like a bodybuilder, you know, I think everyone would perform better. Maybe look better.
That's one of the reasons why, like, before I contacted you, I made sure that I was still competing and I still have goals I want to, because I think people kind of assume that if you're just like on a clean diet that you just can't lift heavy. I think that's still a little bit of a misnomer. You're just going to like lose, you know, if you maintain your muscle mass, you will still maintain a lot of strength. I might not be able to lift the absolute poundages that I was able to at super heavyweight, but my looks formula, so pound for pound, I'm still getting stronger, even now I'm 14 years into the sport. So, Sean, we are getting up to an hour, so what I want to do is close out and then just open the floor for questions. But before I'm going to stop the recording, but before we do that, just for the people that are listening to this after the fact, where can people find you if they want to set up a consultation, if maybe they're interested in getting nutrition coaching? Where can they find you, and then how can they contact you?
So the best way to contact me at the moment, obviously, because of everything that's going on, would probably be by email at seanpatrickcody@gmail.com. But my Instagram is team_2rip1. And
that's TOO, right?
Yeah.
So,
Two is TOO. Yeah. You can DM me there. If I don't get back to you right away, I apologize. But that's basically my email or my Instagram. I do this. The best way I describe it is, I mean, it's hard to say, very casually. As laid back as I was in this interview is probably how I am as far as coaching and business is concerned. I really do want people to hire me with the understanding that we're trying to teach you either how to do the fitness or dieting lifestyle. I truly believe this is the only version of it that is a lifestyle and not just like a diet that lasts X amount of time. And competitive bodybuilders and powerlifters that want to diet and everything like that. I am probably going to take on people in a couple of weeks or months. I'm not going to sit down with anyone and talk to them. You can contact me, obviously, but I'm not going to, because of everything that's going on, you know what I mean? I don't know if people are going to have shows and meets to prep for.
Yeah, well, I will say I want to cut you off because I think during this time it's really important. One of the things that we're focusing on in our gym is more nutrition coaching. So I know like Sean usually is very hands-on. Like he met me in person. We're doing posing practice and stuff, but there is still a lot that can be done through phone, through the internet, through email. So he's helped me out tremendously the last couple of months. I've worked with a lot of people over the past several years, and I've had the best, in my opinion, this is the leanest I've been. This is the most success I've had in just a couple of months, and I plan on kind of taking this even further. You know, it's the first time I've had truly visible abs in my life. I'm excited, so definitely give him. He's very humble. Just another.
You have a very square pecs going on too. You have kind of like the chest plate thing going on.
All right, well, I'll take what I can get. I also.
Sean is very proud, bro. I'm very proud.
Thank you, and I also want to say I kind of glossed over this. I wanted to say, you know, when me and Sean first met, Sean actually he volunteers a lot. He spotted and loaded for many years. When we had the old the CrossFit Strong Island meets for the RPS meets back in the day.
I proudly worked for the late Gene Richlack Jr.
Yes.
I love him. I love RPS. I will be, by the grace of God, doing my first meet.
Amazing. I'm excited. I can't wait for that.
And if they push it back and it interferes with my bodybuilding, I will do the 198-pound class. Go up there and bench 400 pounds with abs and veins and everything. I'm definitely doing.
I'm going to include the links for Sean's Instagram in the description as well as his email. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please share it. Please give it a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.